This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, Show 57.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba. Ramsey always wonders why there aren't any French cars in Canada and the US.
Hello, SE Nation. Welcome back to another episode. If you guys don't know me, my name is Ramsey Majaba. I'm a sales engineer out of Ottawa, Canada, and I use this website and podcast to help other SCs and aspiring sales engineers get better jobs and excel at their job. My guest today, I met him at our sales meeting, which happened a couple weeks back. And his session was the highlight of, at least for me, of that sales meeting. I've been to a couple different sales meetings. It seems they're all marketing slides from product managers. It could be different at different companies. But that's my experience so far. And this one had no marketing slides. This was all about negotiation. And being kind of the only sales engineer in the room, I really enjoyed it. I really found it interesting to understand what the sales guys are trying to do. I had an understanding, but I had no idea how they did it. So I wanted to share that with you guys, and hopefully you'll make use of it as well. So my guest is Jason Mitchell, and he was the guy conducting the session. And just so you guys know, the session for salespeople in general was 4 hours. For management was 2 days. And we're pretty much doing that session in 45 minutes almost. So if you want more information, check out the show notes. WeTheSalesEngineers.com/show 57. I'll have Jason's information on the show notes. You can reach out to him like that and schedule a session. I'm not affiliated with him, but I really enjoyed the session, and it could be useful to a lot of salespeople and SEs as well, especially if you don't want to negotiate on price or sell on price. So without further ado, let's jump in. Good afternoon, Jason. How are you?
I'm great, Ramsey. How are you?
I am excellent.
Excellent.
You are not a sales engineer, but you have a very important role.
No, I am not. In college, studied biochemical engineering for a while.
Well,
so I'm close.
Must have rubbed off at some point. So what are you? Why are you on my show? Well, other than because I really begged you to come on.
Well, you and I met. I was working with your company a couple of weeks ago. And what I do is I used to practice law. I also was a commercial mediator. And so a lot of my work evolved into bringing people together, either internal or external, out of sides of companies, helping people think about their negotiating strategies, maybe dealing with conflict internally or externally. And I do a lot of coaching, training, facilitation, and executive coaching around just, issues of many different things, but basically what's holding people back when they're working with their customers or people they're trying to do business with. And you said, hey, I like it. I want you to talk to my SEs.
Yes. Well, I was the only sales engineer in that room. I really loved what you were teaching in that class. And
thank you.
I figured that, why not expose more people to you so they have a resource for that sort of thing. What were you teaching us in that class? Exactly.
Well, the class was entitled Situational Negotiation Skills. And I did a number of different things over the week, but what I was teaching at its simplest level was, one, principles of negotiation, a model, and then behaviors. How do you act and interact in a conversation? And then before that, I talked a little bit about what are people's frameworks What are their mindsets going into a negotiation, which is critical as well. So we talked about all that.
Okay. Can we dig a little bit deeper, like maybe talk about what the principles of negotiation are? Because I know you had like a 2-day session with the management and 4 hours with each group. So I don't know if you can condense it to 2 minutes, but is that a
Well,
challenge
no,
you're
no,
willing to
no.
accept?
Absolutely. We can, and I'll let, you ask me a couple questions later, but, if I was to sum up the work, um, really at its fundamental level, all people, day in and day out, they carry certain mindsets. They carry certain assumptions about the world, and a lot of it is affected by basically their ability to manage and control their fear and anxiety. All of us are kind of working in this world trying to do a good job. And so we started at that premise, and we really talked about this idea of tension, that in all negotiations and all work we're doing, we live in this concept of positive tension, not negative tension, not violence or oppression, but the idea that the tension there's a difference. And the challenge is that when there is difference, and this is whether you're a salesperson or whether you're an SE or a parent or a neighbor, when difference arises, it's very natural for people to react to that, and they react in a lesser or a least effective way, which is either they give in or they agree without understanding things, they give things, or they fight somebody and they become inflexible and they make it very difficult to see the other person's position. It's called fight or flight. The challenge is when people are uncomfortable in tension, they're not thinking. So we started with that premise and we said, look, you're living in this world. I talked to a number of your SEs at your company, and it's very natural. An SE gets comfortable, they'll like, the customer's like, well, I don't like that code. And the SE's like, well, hey, no, man, I'll write some code for you this weekend. And you know what? I'll come in and I'll do a POC, a proof of concept, or I'll do a demo for you on Monday. And don't worry. And then I'll follow up on anything else you need. It's very easy for SEs to give, because SEs are smart, they're capable, and they have a very, very high ethical bar, and they want to take care of people and please people in a certain way. They want to do good work. So we started with that premise. How am I doing? I want to stop there for a minute. You want to insert anything, or should I keep going?
Good. I do have a question, which maybe will add on to this. When you read books like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about win-win.
Yeah.
And win-win, usually, like when you talk about tension, it means someone's like unhappy or not fully satisfied. Is that assumption okay?
Wait, say that again. When you what?
When there's tension, it means like there are two parties in opposition and someone's not really happy. So how would Stephen Covey's win-win situation work when there's tension?
Yeah, well, what Stephen Covey would say, the bottom line is that win-win, is really the idea of collaboration, building of relationship. And really at its fundamental level, it's about getting your needs met, your motivations, and helping your customers get their needs met. So if people are in opposition, or if there is difference, that is a necessary piece of any relationship or any negotiation. Let me give you an example. So, your people, all of us, you live in the world. Anytime you're working with people, it is important. Would you agree, Ramsey, that it's important for you to be able to know what you want and communicate what you want to the people you're working with? Is that important?
It is very important.
Yeah, that's critical. That's called self-interest. That's actually called competition and the competitive dimension. It is necessary because, Ramsey, what happens if you're working with somebody and you do not have the ability to tell them who you are, what you want, what you expect? What happens to you?
I get neglected, I assume.
Beautiful. You get neglected, and even without bad intent, you get walked on, right?
Yes.
It's like, hey, go ask Ramsey, he'll do it, or give it to Ramsey, or Ramsey, do this. So a necessary part of any relationship is the ability to stand for yourself, defend yourself, protect yourself. That's critical. And that's called the competitive dimension of negotiation. Now, what you talked about, Stephen Covey, it is also important for you to take care of others, your customers, your internal, external reports or executives or, equals, neighbors, children, parents. You got to take care of people, right? I mean, it's important for you to be able to build relationship. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Because if you're not able to take care of others, what happens is you end up with no friends, right? You end up on your own. So you talked about Stephen Covey, and the fact is win-win. In any relationship you have, the idea of negotiating is basically, how do I speak for myself? How am I authentic and true and honest without offending or pushing you away? So the balance between those two, Ramsey, is what's called positive tension. And if in order to get to creative solutions, you got to harness that energy. So you cannot have a win-win unless people also are defining who they are. Because if you're just giving and satisfying your customer but not taking care of yourself, there is no relationship. It's just basically in service to the other. And that's not going to be healthy or good for you or your company. Just as if you're only beating up your customer, that's not good for you or your customer or your company as well. That makes sense?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Beautiful.
Without me knowing that. So, awesome.
Excellent. And I can keep going unless you have a question.
How about you keep going?
Good. So, Stephen Covey, you talked about the fact that, when there's discomfort or people are in opposition, the idea, and you're an engineer, is that correct?
Yes.
Good. So the idea of tension being positive, right? Positive tension is all around us in the physical world. It is all around us. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Ramsey. It's your show, but I'm going to put you on the spot, brother. And here's the question.
Go ahead.
So can you give me an example as an engineer in the physical world where a positive tension is demonstrated? Give an example of positive tension in the physical constructed world.
Well, it's all around us, like tall buildings and
exactly
airplanes. Hey, I knew that. Good. Yeah, keep asking me questions that I know.
Exactly. I know. I'm not interested in shaming you, my friend. So you're right. Yeah. Buildings, recessed concrete, planes, bridges, tennis rackets, boats, sailboats, and much like sailboats are negotiations. Wind in the sail is positive tension. And if you clip the sail well and you get enough wind in, the boat moves. If you have too much wind, boat goes over. If you have too little wind, boat luffs, though the sail luffs. And it's the same in negotiating. Creative solutions, be a dynamic partner as an SC, is the byproduct of positive tension, right? So SEs will create more dynamic relationships and interactions by harnessing this idea of difference and collaboration, as well as self-interest. So here's the challenge. Difference is uncomfortable for people. And especially, I will tell you, in my experience, I'm not going to generalize totally, with engineers. Because engineers are brought in. You guys are the solution guys. You guys are the problem solvers. You are the question answers. You are required to know the answer to every question and the result and the resolution to every problem. And the bottom line is, when you get into a point that's difficult and uncomfortable, again, I told you, it's very natural for people to go into reaction. They stop thinking and then they start reacting in order to avoid the discomfort of what you talked about, to interests in opposition to each other, or in contravention to each other. And so a lot of the work that you and I did, and that I do with clients, is, well, first of all, we have to assume that we live in tension, right? So higher performers, they're not trying to dilute it. They're not saying, oh, I'm going to go make nice. My job is just to satisfy the people I'm with. Oh, I'm just going to get rid of it and not make it uncomfortable at all. What they're saying is tension is a necessary byproduct of good negotiating and really good advocacy on any level. So knowing that, I'm going to prepare to be more effective in it. That's what high performers do. They don't go in order to dilute the positive tension or get rid of it. They actually go in to optimize it, to utilize it. What I like to say is to marinate in the positive tension. And so knowing that, part of the work is having people start to realize, well, wow, it's there. Who am I in it? How do I tend to act and interact in that? That's a level of awareness. And then we move into, well, if you're going to optimize tension and provide value to yourself, to your salespeople, what are some principles that we can strategize around so that we can actually go deeper into the difference and be more effective in the difference? And so I work with basically 6 principles of negotiating skills or sales negotiation to help people be more prepared, more effective in the discomfort of difference. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, good.
What I would like to do now, if that's okay with you, is maybe go briefly through those 6 principles and maybe discuss how the SE can help in those aspects, because most of these are sales oriented.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're not sales oriented. I mean, really, the idea is, situational negotiation skills. It could be for people in marketing. It could be for people in legal. It could be for people in sales, contracts, and engineering. Because you said before we got on the call, and you're right, you understand, every time an SE goes before a customer, it's a negotiation of a sort, right? The SE is representing the company. They are representing a framework. They have a point of view, and there's ways that they can communicate value. So good. So first of all, we talked about value is, attention is positive. There's another very important point before we get to the principles, which is this idea that people look at things differently, okay? And it's the idea of that value is subjective. People look at things and value from their own vantage point. So for an example, you might have somebody in sales, a deal gets done and a salesperson, a silo would be like, great, more revenue. Well, an engineer might say, oh my God, more work. Somebody in legal might be, more liability. And somebody in contracts might say, oh my God, this is going to create more conflict internally on the team. So you can be in a situation and people look at it differently. I was a little while ago, I was looking for a 5-stack metal cabinet. I was driving down the road. I saw a garage sale and there was a metal stack. I get out. I ask the person how much they're selling it for, and they're selling it for $250. New at Office Max, they're like $310. So I said to the person, I said, wow, that's expensive. They said, well, look, it's in pristine condition. This is practically new. And I said, come on, I can't even respond to that. Give me a better price. And they're like, come on, no, $250. I said, I can't respond, better price. They said, okay, let me think. And they thought for about 2 seconds and they said, $250. Didn't move. I said, all right, I'll give you $50. They said, no. I get in my car, I leave. Later in the day, 4 p.m., I'm driving by the same garage sale. It's over. The 5-stack is on. It is on the sidewalk, and it's got a sign on top of it that says free. And I took it and I put it in my car. So at 10 in the morning, it had one value, and in the afternoon, going back in the garage, had another. Value is subjective, and if value is subjective, your engineers need to start thinking about how do they shape and mold that value conversation. So there's a series of principles. One of them is this. Well, you have a question?
No, I just comment. I feel like you just described the beginning of the quarter and at the end of the quarter.
That's so beautiful. Exactly. Beginning of the quarter, right? Executives are like, hey, man, be strategic, build long-term relationships. And then at the end of the quarter, they're like, get it done, put it in the funnel, close it, right? Absolutely.
Yep.
Value is shifting all the time. Well, first of all, your SCs have tremendous power. One, because they are experts, they're trustworthy, and you're the eyes and ears of your company into the customer organization. So, you can be setting frameworks, you can be setting positions and value every time you're on site. So one of the most important things to think about is one of the principles is this idea of positioning your service, your products advantageously. And so it's this idea that anytime you're going in and you're going in front of a customer, you want to really think about what is your value prop, and what I like to say is, what's your story? What's your point of view? And what happens usually is when people are talking about value, they will talk about their own company. Well, hey, here, we are at IDOC. We do this. We're international. We have great customer service. We're responsive. And that's what they think is their value prop. That's not an effective value prop. What you want to be thinking about is how your company is addressing and helping the customer with their problems, their challenges, their obstacles, their changing trends. And you want to put the customer at the center of the story. So it could be something as simple as, an SE gets brought on board and you say, look, this is fantastic. When you work with us, you guys are able to have a relationship where when there's a problem, you are able to call somebody immediately and get a call back within an hour. You are able to actually calm down and focus on other areas because you know that any of the issues around service or redundancy is going to be immediately addressed, which ultimately creates a certain sense of peace and calm on your team. Now, I'm just making it up, Ramsey, but the point I'm making is you want to put your customer at the center of the story, not your company. Does that make sense?
That's perfect. That's something that a lot of SEs are taught, but it's hard to implement.
It is really hard.
They need to understand what the customer wants. Go
on, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, a lot of us go on, we show the features and benefits of our products or services, but these could be features or benefits that the customer doesn't care about. And
exactly,
no one thinks about the demo as part of the negotiation.
Right.
That's perfect.
Not only that, because you guys put together a demo. Your company is, managing all the logistics, all the resources, taking all the time, and then, really giving that to the customer. Now, it's great, but that's a huge, huge give. You know? And so when your SEs are giving a lot of time, lunch and learns, demos, maybe agreeing to write a little code for a customer on the weekend, or they're coming in and they're going to, organize some resources that can be brought on site. Your people need to start realizing that's a tremendous give. And another principle is, conceding according to plan. Number one rule of when your people are giving things, and they give a lot to the customers, when you're giving things of real value, you need to ask for things in return. So your SEs can really help the salespeople by, asking the salespeople, hey guys, where are we lacking? What do you need more of? Do you want to have access to their strategic meetings? Do you want some introductions? Do you want a reference? And you as SEs can, you can put that together. Hey man, I'll write some code for you this weekend, but what I'm going to really ask for also, because that's going to take a lot of time, we would really like to have an hour meeting with your CTO next Wednesday. And I'm going to bring in my guy or my gal, right? Thinking about gives and gets, asking back, right? So positioning is a very important thing. Asking, telling your story, what's your values prop? Asking back, really important. When you're giving, now, if your customer says, hey, would you mind giving me a call on tomorrow morning? That's not the time. You don't want to be, stingy or greedy. But if they're asking for something that really is a cost of time or of energy or resource, it's a good opportunity to maybe attach that to something and ask for something in return that you or your company needs. Now, you said one other thing, which is you guys at the demo, you're trying to find out what the customer wants. I just want to challenge you. Another principle we talk about is the idea that there's a difference between needs versus wants. Okay. Your customers, and as well as your engineers, are really always focused on features and benefits, and, cost, timetables. Your customer will always be clear with what they want. It is very specific. The needs are the why they're asking for what they're asking for, why they're doing what they're doing. And your people want to get to those motivations because that's richer. So, and deeper. And it's actually easier to satisfy a need than a want. So anytime your customers are asking you for wants that are difficult, your SEs can really ask the question, well, wait a minute, hold on. Why are you asking for it? What's driving that? If we weren't able to do it, what's the repercussion? If we were, so to get down to different levels of need, because that's where you and your salespeople can craft a compelling story to the customer's needs.
Shouldn't we be worried about insulting the customer by asking all those questions?
Well, give me an example. What's a question you'd be worried about where being insulting?
We want this feature.
Yeah.
And then we ask them, why do you want that? It's because I want it.
Yeah, right.
So, it could turn into contentious insults.
Fair enough. Now, a couple things. First of all, and another principle is this idea, and you set me up beautiful.
You're welcome.
Is the idea of managing information skillfully. That's what good SEs and salespeople do in their lives. So, yes, SEs go in and ask a lot of questions. Very important. It's very important to think about what kind of information do you want to uncover, okay? And then there's another piece, which is what are you going to say when you get into the conversation? Now, SEs generally, and I'm making a gross generalization, but this is in my experience, they tend to talk a lot. The customer wants information, the SE has it, and they go in and they do a data download. Features, functions. There's a concept called showing up and throwing up, right? Salespeople do it, so do engineers.
Yes.
We love our data. We love our companies. But actually, experts do something that's unnatural, which is they ask almost 3 times more questions than the person they're in front of. So, first of all, you want to think about that. There's an element of speaking and uncovering. Now, when somebody says, hey, I want this feature, and you say, why do you want it? They say, well, I want it. Okay. Look, there's a moment of positive tension. First of all, recognize anytime you're asking why can be sharp, right? So if you want to soften it a little bit, somebody says, hey, I want this feature, you could say, okay, hold on. What's driving that feature? How do you see that improving your output? Okay, what's the impact if we're able to get it done? What happens if we can't, right? So if your customer pushes back and says, well, why, because I want it. Internally, your SEs need to stay in the positive tension and say to themselves, that's not good enough. They're asking me for more work, more resources. I have the right to ask and understand it. Because if I can't give it, maybe you can't give them what you want, but maybe you might be able to help them with what they need. Maybe the feature, gives them a certain sense of predictability that if there is growth or if there is some movement, from premise to the cloud or whatever's happening, they are set with that feature. Who knows? Or maybe it proves that they got something extra. We don't know. But, asking the question. So asking questions, speaking, and then also one more thing. Your people want to be thinking about, what do they need to protect? Okay. What do you hope they don't ask? And your SEs need to be prepared for that. So if they're going in, they're like, okay, you do that feature, what's that going to cost? Well, if your SEs don't want to talk about price, they need to be real. They got to be ready to answer that question, right? And, they could actually say, well, you know what? Contractually, we're really not supposed to be talking about that. And that would actually disrupt and elongate the process. Or they could go to the next principle, which is the idea of set high targets. They could actually do something that's called anchoring, which is sharing comparative data. You're not giving a price. You could say, well, I got to tell you, features of that complexity, we've seen that as much in certain outputs, it's been as much as $12,000. Well, what am I not going to pay $12,000? No. I'm not. I don't even know the price. I'm just saying I've seen that. But now what your people have done is they've actually created a perception around the range of reason, what's possible. Then your sales guy comes in and says, no, we're going to ask 1,750. But you've set him up. So setting high targets basically is the premise, Ramsey. When your SEs are asking for things from your customers, or it's better to ask for a little bit more, because when your people ask for more and expect more in their life, you're going to get more. That's the number one rule of negotiating, Ramsey. Those who ask for more get more. There's a little story, the company that I work for, we brought in years ago, 30 10-year-olds, asking them what did they know about negotiating with their parents. And one of the girls, 10-year-old girl, she had a classic line. She says, well, everybody knows if you want a kitten, start with a pony. So there's a little bit of evilness there. But, there's some truth in it, which is like, look, if you expect more in your life, you're going to get more in your life.
Isn't there a risk of like the whole thing being off by stating a number that's out of the realm of reasonable?
Well, first of all, when you're making an ask, like if you're going to actually open, you're going to say, okay, here's the cost. Your open needs to be within the range of reason, preferably on the high side, but you want to be in the range. On anchor, if you're sharing comparable data, what happens is when people do not know the value of something, very early in a conversation, they're going to look for comparisons, comparable data, reference points to give them a sense of what's possible. So the anchor is you're not asking for that. All you're doing is just saying, well, this is what we've seen. And if they react strongly, your SEs are still free. You're saying, no. That's not the price. I'm sorry. That's what we've seen. We've seen 12,000. Now, one, you could open, or you could say, let me get my sales guy on the line, and he's going to give you a price. But then you tell the sales guy, hey man, I anchored at 12,000. I think they're hoping 1,500. I think you could come in at 18. Whatever. So, if the customer is a little bit reactive, that's okay. Positive tension, Ramsey, what it really means is it means engagement. It means people are connected. That's what positive tension is, right? Now, look, let me give you the last principle, which is basically the foundation of everything, which is your SEs day in and day out need to know the full range and strength of their power, right? And again, what tends to happen is people can have an assumption, or some idea, which is my job is to make it easy. My job is to get the deal. My job is not to make pushback. My job is to say yes. And what people tend to do is they tend to underestimate their power. You and your SEs have more power than they realize. And they've got to also remember the people that they're doing business with are also under pressure and constraint. So this, when your SEs are working with the customers, can they remember that power is perception, and they only need enough power to where the other party perceives them to be powerful? Actually, somebody at your company told me a great story. They sold a test and measurement tool, and I mean, it was a multi-year process. It was like $12 million. It was a tremendous sale. And the customer told the salesperson, one of the reasons we bought from you is we loved the fact that you guys brought your executive VP into the meeting in order to close it. And the salesperson, she was sitting there thinking, God, who was the executive VP? Who's the executive VP? And then she realized that it wasn't a VP. The person who was brought into the meeting a couple years earlier was a field sales engineer, an SE. And the fact is that SE was so knowledgeable and was so competent and so confident in the meeting, the customer assumed executiveship. They assumed that they were an executive. And so it proves the point. You only need enough power to where the other party perceives you to be powerful. If you're perceived to be powerful, you are powerful. You'll negotiate from a powerful place. If you perceive yourself to be weak, you'll negotiate from a weak place. So, it kind of in conclusion, you really want your people really thinking and strategizing a little bit. Who am I? Where am I frightened? How can I get my power? And then how can I think strategically to be more effective in this difference? Because more effective negotiators, sales engineers, executives prepare and live in the tension and optimize and marinate it. They don't run from it or run over it.
So the biggest takeaway I got from this is that I should change my title from sales engineer to executive sales engineer.
That's right, man.
Yep.
And see, you are an executive. You came up to me so beautifully. You said, "Hey, Jason, will you do this?" And I did it.
Yes, you did, and I appreciate it.
I enjoyed meeting you. So you got some power, bro.
Thanks, man. Thanks, I appreciate it. But I do have so for sales engineers, they don't report to the sales guy, but the sales guy kind of controls their lives. Like, go do this demo, go talk about this. So when the sales engineer, I don't know who that other sales engineer, the executive sales engineer was. I'd love to meet him. But generally speaking, when the sales engineer goes into a conference room to do a demo, he doesn't have, or at least he doesn't perceive that he has power, because all the power sits with the account manager or the sales guy and the customers. How can we overcome that?
So, how can you overcome that? Well, look, that is a very deep element of perception. So first of all, I just want to point out, if your SE is going somewhere and he says, "I don't have any power," well, that's problematic, because if you perceive yourself to be constrained, you will negotiate from a constrained place. First of all, there's a recognition of that. But, power is affected by a number of different things. So one of the things your people can do is, let's say they're going in a meeting, they don't feel particularly strong. They can sit down for a minute, 3 minutes, silently. First of all, breathe, feel their body, get into their body, and then ask themselves a few questions, which is, what information has been shared? Does it give it or take? Does that give me information? Does that give me power or take in power away? Information is a source of power. What is the situation, right? Why am I going to the demo? Who's going to be there, right? What's been said? How do they feel about the company that you represent? Who is going to be in the room? So organizationally, do you have any power? They can think about personally, how are they feeling? And where can they gather power? Because again, your SEs always have the power, whether they feel it or not, to tell their story, to make an ask, to make an ask. Yeah, it's my daughter. So it's a great, I have no power. There you go. No, but yeah, she is, any of your SEs who have who have children, recognize this. They have more conviction. They have a lot more belief in themselves, especially when it comes to their parents. So just be aware of that. Yep. But it requires this idea of personally, and then also, how can I plan a little bit? So if they are feeling that they don't have power, the question, first of all, is one, where do I have power? Is it in information, the organization, my planning, the situation? Do I know the other people, the other negotiators who are going to be in the room? And then also, what power or what's constraint or pressure are the other people under? And all they need to do is just try to create a modicum, an equality of power, right? Because you're right, Ramsey, that is really where it starts. And if they can't find any power, they've got to spend a little time and actually try to find some power where they have it. And really a great place is really to sit quietly, quiet the mind, and then once you've quieted, to do a little bit of assessment. Where is my power? And let me remember, these people have pressure and constraint as well. Power is perception, my friend.
Nice. That might be the title. All right. So this is great. And I'm going to move on to the next round, which is the not so fire round. And these are questions that I ask all my guests. The same question.
Beautiful. And then I will come to a close. I don't want to lose your audience. We've been going on a long time.
Yes. So we'll do it in more of a fire round succession,
Beautiful.
if you will. What is the one thing you love about teaching people how to negotiate?
I can say two. I love the people, first of all, especially when they're committed and they have a sense where they want to be present. But next to that is when in the class, people have moments, they have light bulbs where they say, you know what? Like I talked to an engineer the other day where they said, you know what? I had a shift. I had a realization, which is, I thought I lacked confidence, but it wasn't that. I'm very confident. It is that I have fear. And she made a distinction between fear and confidence. And there is a fear. And once she understood that, it actually really transformed the way she was preparing for her interaction. So when people have little shifts in their perceptions or their mindsets, tremendously satisfying, because the world, Ramsey, and people and humans, it's not like Hollywood. People don't have dramatic transformations in the matter of an hour. It's really about shifts in mindset and outlook and framework, and it can be tremendously expansive.
I had several aha moments in your session.
Great, thank you.
I would assume, like, if you see someone's face and he has that aha moment, that might be priceless.
Yeah, it is. It's very satisfying. It really is.
So, like, this is just 1 hour or 45 minutes that people are going to listen to. Is there a book or resource that people can look into afterwards to learn about negotiation?
Well, I think there's a couple, a couple classics. Get to Yes. Again, that's interest-based negotiating. It comes out of Harvard. It's a classic book. There, another one I think that is very interesting, which is Never Split the Difference. And then one that I like, which is not about actually negotiating deals, but it is about negotiating. And it's really about frameworks, which is leadership and self-deception. And it's basically the idea that people are having these really lofty goals, and then they don't meet them, and then they make all these excuses for not meeting them. And that's a little bit about what I talked to you about around, people's framework and mindsets that get in the way. A great book by the Arbinger Institute, Leadership and Self-Deception.
Perfect. All right. So last question. We know who you are. You're Jason Mitchell. How can people learn more about you and reach you if they want any of your services?
Well, I'd love it. Go on my website, you guys. My website is Mitchell Group, SF, I'm in San Francisco, mitchellgroupsf.com. And there you can contact me. We can engage. We can get on a web. I do webinars. I do keynotes. I go in and I work with executives. I do trainings. I do facilitations. So I do really a whole panoply, mediations, and then just coaching on a lot of the curriculums I do as well as executive coaching. So it lays it out on the website.
Perfect. So everything's going to be on the show notes, which is this is show 57. Just to be clear, I am not affiliated with you. I'm not getting paid for this, but I really loved your class, and I want people to reach out to you because, one, you're a good speaker. They're not going to get bored, and two, I found a lot of use out of your class. So thank you.
That's fantastic, and I think more importantly than you not getting paid, I'm not getting paid.
Yes.
So we're doing this out of the benefit of our goodwill.
Yes. Perfect.
Ramsey, it was a pleasure running into you, working with you, and I this was great. I mean, I had fun having the conversation.
Likewise. Thank you. Come back anytime. I'd love to know what you guys thought of this. Like, that's the end of the session, and I really enjoyed it. Kind of a summary of the 4 hours that I did with Jason. So, and negotiation isn't something we think about as sales engineers. When we're going in to do a demo, we don't think about negotiation. We're thinking about showing our stuff, but the more value we can create, the easier it is for the sales guy to negotiate based on that value. Also, not giving them everything. I've seen a lot of SEs talk about, at least in my industry, as soon as the customer says, hey, I want a demo of this, or I want a demo license of that, it's like, sure thing, here you go. Without asking for anything in return. Like, not even, do you have budget to buy? So, just make sure that you understand that you have the power. In any case, I enjoyed talking to Jason. I hope you guys enjoyed listening. Show notes are at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show57. And I am trying to put YouTube videos more consistently. So the last video was about commission and salary structure. Check it out if you guys are interested. And I'll see you guys next time. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.